seen nobody like this. You ain't seen nobody like this. You hear my sound all over town singing. Whoa. You ain't seen nobody like this. You ain't seen nobody like this. You hear my sound all over town singing. Whoa. I think there's something in the water. If you wanna take a sip, but be careful what you wish for. The faint of heart can't handle it. Everybody wants a piece of someone else's prize, but it ain't free, it don't come cheap. Only the strongest will survive. You ain't seen nobody like this.
Good evening and welcome to San Antonio Soccer RoundTable. My name is Harry. Joining me tonight is Red from 451 Podcast out of Detroit. We're going to talk Detroit City and their path from NPSL all the way to starting in USL Championship about 24 hours from now, actually 24 hours and 20 minutes or so before the ball kicks off. Reason why I wanted to bring Red on, and this is hopefully something we're going to do every week that we can, is to kind of highlight the opposing team, kind of get the view from the other side with that here. So, Red, do you want to thank you for taking the time out on a Friday evening to talk about your Detroit City?
Yeah, no doubt, man. Harry, thank you. I appreciate you for bringing me on. Look forward to it. It's always good to connect with supporters in various ways, connected with supporters across the country. We'll just say that.
It's been an interesting couple of days here between Detroit City and San Antonio FC and the supporters groups on social media, which I am the one that inadvertently kicked that off, evidently. So,
you the fire starter, huh?
And just for full disclosure here, I don't consider myself an owner, but I know that they sold the ownership shares. So I do have, a couple of shares of Detroit City. So it is a team that I follow. It is a team that I really respect. It's a team that I think does things the right way. Even before coming into USL Championship, along those lines here. So this one, I have a basic understanding of Detroit City, from an outsider's view, but nothing like Red, will be able to provide along those lines here. So, to me, and I'll kind of start off on that. I think that's a unique, and I know Chattanooga's done it, and I know a couple others have done it here, but I think it's a really unique thing, especially coming into USL Championship, where you have individuals like myself, as quote unquote owners, in the club here. So your kind of initial thoughts when Detroit City did that, and, how has it been? Obviously, I get the emails, I don't go to the functions that's, for owners up in Detroit, obviously. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was great. It was great to have the opportunity. Our supporters for our club are so dedicated to what we've been building for the last 10 years that, brothers and sisters that are here, are always jumping at the opportunity in various ways to invest in the club. It going back to even the investment in helping restore in ways Keyworth Stadium, so, I think that was a big thing, for anybody, regardless of whether or not we would even get Class B ownership shares or, be investors of the club in that way. I think that the relationship that has been built over the last decade between the front office and the supporters, I don't think that they would have even had to give us shares. You know what I mean? They could have asked us just straight for investment, you know what I mean? And
Right.
We would have all jumped at it. But of course it's great, you know what I mean? And obviously, there's different levels, you know what I mean, of ownership that, grants you different kind of say. And, we've got a pretty minimal say in terms of what that kind of ownership provides us. But even before we got an opportunity to invest that way and become legitimate what I usually call micro owners of the club, we always had a sense of ownership with the club. And it wasn't just in terms of entitlement as supporters, oh, we run this stuff, you know what I mean? You're going to listen, but there's always been that mutual respect, you know what I mean? And if you
Right.
listen
They've
to,
worked together.
yeah, if you listen to Sean, Todd, Alex, Dave,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? 4 of the 5 original owners, especially when you listen to Sean Man talk, he always say, they're the host of the party, um, you know, but we are the party, you know what I mean? And they realized long ago that, we're the ones kind of leading the wagon here, and have in many ways allowed us to take that lead. So I think even before we had this opportunity to financially invest in the club, a lot of us already took a sense of ownership. That's why, you know, that's why you see what you see on match day. That's why you see the podcast. That's why you see the presence on social media, because it's always been our club. You know what I mean? We've
Mhm.
never, for the most part, the culture of the club among the most hardcore supporters has never been one of just a consumer.
Right.
And we've actually bumped. I know I have. I've ticked some of my brothers and sisters off at times, saying like, "Cut that consumer stuff out." You know what I mean? Like, this is our club. You know what I mean? But some of us have different roles in this club. You know what I mean? Some are in the front office, and of course, we want to have an independent supporter base.
Mhm.
I agree with that. But without a doubt, I think that's been a creed for a lot of the supporters for a long time. So it was great. It was a great opportunity for us to once again like financially invest. And obviously it wasn't just about, let's pay supporters back by giving them a legitimate piece of ownership. I mean, I don't think that was the catalyst for the
Right.
move.
I don't think that was
Obviously
it either. Yeah.
there was a financial issue going on. You know what I mean? That, we needed to be able to support the team in a way to help stabilize it during a global pandemic. You know what I mean? When you're in the business of gathering large groups of people in a space and all of a sudden you can't do that, um, that's serious, And so, but the good thing is that they could trust that they could turn to us when they needed to do that, and trust that their vision as the original founders of the club in the front office was always in concert with our vision as supporters, o- overwhelmingly. So it's good to have that trust established.
So for Detroit City, they started out in the NPSL, which is a semi-pro league. For that here, I want to say what 2013, 2012 time frame, I think is when it was.
When we
Uh,
started off there,
in NPSL,
yeah,
because you guys
20
were what
20. Yeah, we launched in 2012. Yep, in
so
MPSL. This is our 10-year anniversary this year.
so and like I said here, I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I remember catching, and this was probably 16, 17 through there, and catching, some of the shows, and like Jason Davis, I believe, did a show up there,
Yeah.
and a couple other national shows. And what stuck out to me was number one, how they treated those players that came to play with them. And we're talking about, kids that are in college, most likely, or, high school, but it became a destination spot for college kids along those lines. So it wasn't just Michigan, students from Michigan. I remember listening to a show, you had kids, top college players coming all over from United States to play for Detroit City, and many made several return trips here. So, as a supporter of the group, what was that kind of like, being able to help build that foundation of, not only are we going to be good in the community, but we're going to provide that solid foundation to be able to help build the future stars, whether it's men or women, for the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can speak for a large portion of our supporter base when I say that when a new player, whether man or woman, comes into the fold, that we receive them as part of our community, and we nurture that gift that we're given. You know what I mean? In that sense, we know that when we were in NPSL, obviously, like I would say, even when we were in NPSL, we were a professional club.
Hmm.
Now, we didn't pay our players,
Right.
right?
But you
Obviously,
acted
right?
like it.
But without a doubt, the foundation was built from the front office, and through the technical staff, in a very professional way, that a lot of, particularly the men, right? Because the women, it's a new formation, with our women's side, but the men, a lot of the players, you know, when I interview players for the 451 podcast,
Hmm.
I always ask them this question. It's a two-part question. I said, what was your journey coming to Detroit City FC? Why'd you come to Detroit City? And then if they played more than one season, I asked them, why did you come back? You know what I mean? Because we all have been in
Because a lot of them
spaces.
do, though. That's
Oh
the thing.
yeah,
A lot of them
right.
come back.
And a good example is, for example, in this newest season, in season 4, in episode 2, I got a chance to sit down with Lay Diop,
Hmm.
right? And Lay came to the club when we were still an amateur outfit, and he played for us after high school before he even started college. And so we were having that conversation, me and him, and he was remembering just how he was treated and how he was made to feel when he came, and he talked about, the care that, he received when he came into the fold here, not even just from the way that, the coaching staff is. Obviously, Trevor James has a really special way of working with the players, is not just treating them as a little, chess pieces that he's moving around a board. You know what I mean? Obviously, when they're on the pitch, you know what I mean, they're at
Hmm.
his mercy in terms of that. You know what I mean? But the level of relationship that he builds and making sure that their well-being is taken care of, you know what I mean? And then
Hmm.
Tiffany James, you know what I mean, who's the assistant general manager, in the fold with that as well. So there's really intentional things that were done from very early on. And then not even just from the front office and the technical staff doing things like that, making sure that they're taken care of and their basic needs are met, you know what I mean? Like they have good
Hmm.
living conditions, and, stuff like that's important apparently. I
It
know
is.
we've experienced a few clubs that we played against that didn't seem to realize it. I don't know, um, but there's that piece. But even by the supporters, you know what I mean. You
Hmm.
have a lot of supporters who will come together, and they'll make meals for the players. You know what I mean. They'll reach out. One of the, the newest contributor to the 451 podcast, Kelly, that just
Hmm.
joined. You know what I mean. She's played a vital role in helping out. Players that come to the club and helping them find residency and meals and like all the basic stuff, you know what I mean. And so this goes back, you know what I mean, 10 years where um that kind of accommodation was embedded in the culture of the club. And so there are a lot of players even back then as amateurs. Not only that, but when they come into the space here, in Detroit, even on match days, for us as supporters, one of the primary reasons, if not the primary reason, why we raise so much hell when they're on the pitch and sing for 90 plus minutes isn't just because, everybody's half of them are drunk out of their mind and just dancing, right? But it really is, the purpose of it is to be a source of adrenaline
Hmm.
for the men and the women on the pitch. You know what I mean? It's there to uplift them. You know what I mean? So it's very centered, and it's very centered on helping to uplift and exalt them in their roles. You know what I mean? And I think that's just built into the club, and it's reciprocated. You know what I mean? These, men and women do so many phenomenal. I had I had even Sean Claude Lawson when he was here. When I've got a 2-year-old daughter, when my daughter was just born, him and his mom drove all the way over here to the west side of Detroit and dropped baby clothes off to me.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of relationship that is built. You know, so I think that there's nothing. There's a very genuine and authentic relationship like that is built from very early on. That I think players gravitate to that. And sometimes we're not going to have the biggest. We didn't have the biggest budget in NISA. We ain't going to have the biggest budget in USL. In the championship, but um, if we can have players when they're coming here especially the newer players that are coming here for the first time, feel what it means to be a part of this club. Because I can't even verbalize all of it. You know what I mean? I can
Right.
only articulate verbally so much of it. You need to be in that presence and feel it. You know what I mean? And they feel that, and that's the same conversation that I have with so many of them. You know what I mean? On the side is that they remember how we made them feel. You know, it's basic dynamics of relationship, right?
It is. Now, the other thing that I think that Detroit City did very well, obviously they have a great game day, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. But the ability for them as an NPSL team to put their product out on television, I think, local TV even at that time.
Yeah.
But even if they weren't, they put out to me, they were the leaders at this level of being able to televise or put your games over the web where you could watch them that way here. And for a lot of them, it was home and away. For that here, which to me it is still even a rarity for that here now. I joked around, or I think the running joke was that when you guys went to NISA, that your quality of shows was better than what NISA, the league, was putting out. For that here. So.
You ain't wrong. You ain't wrong. I was going to bat for my Kuju. I was like, give it a chance. It's affordable. It's wide reaching. There's people who can't. Oh man, it sucked.
But it's like I follow UPSL here, UWS and WPSL. It's great along those lines, and I know to me NPSL, USL League 2 is a shade above those levels here. And I know US Soccer does a poor job of putting up a proper tier for that here, but to me, like, if you're at UPSL, UWS, that's fine because you're actually being able to get it. But to me, like I said here, that is part of the reasons why I did the ownership shares with Detroit City, is because you could tell they were already a proven or a professional organization, even though they were in NPSL. So moving to NISA, without going too much in that rabbit hole. Oh, go ahead.
And one other thing though about that, one of the things I think that is a big credit to our broadcast though is Alex Wright, who is one of the one of the founders of the club. He's got a background in that.
Oh, does he?
So yeah, so he knows he's got a background in local television production. I can't remember exactly where he worked, but so he knows what quality is and what quality ain't. You know what I mean? If you had Red running those decisions, man, it'd be buffering
I think
the whole damn match.
You do a good job. I've listened to your podcast, and me, I'm more of a plug and play, where you do a lot more, mixing in, and your shows are a lot more interactive with different things compared to mine. NISA though, you guys basically ran NISA, won everything you wanted to win along those lines, and I'm not going to try to rip NISA, because I think they unfortunately had the worst timing of trying to open up a league, with the pandemic, with the issues with the Cosmos, which, some of it was pandemic, some of it's ownership issues, just all, that whole line there. But your thoughts on the NISA years? I know you guys won a lot, but I'll say this here. There was another team that went into NISA at the same time that had the same expectations, and that's Chattanooga. They had a rich history as well. For whatever reason, Chattanooga never lived up, in my opinion, to those expectations like Detroit City has.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how they do this year. I do think they'll hopefully fill the role of Detroit City. But your thoughts on Detroit City in NISA?
Now, yeah, obviously, performance-wise, we deboed the entire league. I mean, I don't think that's, I don't think that's surprising. They won everything that they possibly could. And I think a lot of that, is credited to Trevor James and, you
Hmm.
know, his coaching and management skills and being able to put together a squad that was not only sufficient for NISA, but, you know, I have to believe that was in preparation, beginning to be in preparation for what it might look to move beyond that, you know, at some point in time. You know, I think that he does a great job of bringing the right kind of guys together, you know, as I know, a team is more than a bunch of just talented individuals.
Hmm.
You know, there are a lot of guys that were a part of our squad that are extremely talented that didn't even get a whole lot of play within that system because, you know, the gaffer had a certain approach that he was taking based off of the league. You know, a good example would be Roddy Green. Roddy Green, kid's dope. You know what I mean? So he's very, very talented. Glad to see he's at Chattanooga now, you know. But you know, he didn't necessarily solidify a starting 11 spot within the system, but you know, in a different system that would, you know, potentially allow his best of qualities to shine. Um, you know, he's going to be a star. I think he's going to go down there to Chattanooga, and he's gonna shock some
He's gonna
people. I mean, I
excel. Yeah.
already know that he did in the preseason. Yeah, he did on his trial. I mean, he was putting goals in the back of the net while he was a trialist. Anyway, so performance wise, obviously, you know, I think that is what it is. Nisa, I was a big fan of Nisa. Still am, because I go back
Yeah,
to
they play a
the,
pivotal part. I
you know,
really do believe that.
yeah, yeah, without a doubt. Well, and my thing is, you go back to what was it, the Summit on America Soccer that
Hmm.
happened in Chattanooga some years ago, right
Hmm.
before NISA, and you had all these clubs come together and say like these are the core values that we agree in, and folks signed on it. And obviously, some lived up to it, some may have just been signing like a rubber stamp. Who knows? You know, didn't really dug through it a whole lot, but some would criticize that some of them that signed didn't necessarily, you know, put their money where their mouth was in terms of that, or make a legitimate sacrifice to live up to those values. But at the end of the day, um, one of the things that was clear was that NISA as a league, in terms of its foundational values, was consistent with what was drafted at that summit. And
Correct.
I still believe that. I still believe that it's possible that that it can flourish. I think that there's certainly um, were some questionable ownership in there and questionable structure in terms of power and decision making. You know what I mean? You know, there,
Pizzagate.
yeah, Pizzagate, and you know, I've heard things about, you know, one owner having quite a financial stake in a few different clubs, and
Hmm.
folks having veto power of this and that. You know, so that stuff is obviously a little bit concerning for somebody who was stumping for a league. Well, I don't want to say I was stumping for the league, because it wasn't like I was, you know,
But it
I,
would, to me, the problem that Nice has done is they set that expectation of, hey, we're going to be an open league. We're going to,
yeah,
we're going to treat to the grassroots, to the really indie teams that want to be able to build and grow.
yeah,
And I don't, the leadership at the top, number one, there's not enough leadership. Number two, you know, and I lived through this with NASL,
right.
is you've got to have a proper front office that can help guide the owners.
And
Nisa
that, yeah, and
Nisa
that's
doesn't have that.
that is a big legitimate criticism right there. You know, and I think that's a piece. Now, I kind of come from the frame of mind in terms of our departures, that
Hmm.
I believe that there were more pull factors to USL than there were push factors from NISA. Um, but I think that people can legitimately push back on that idea. I think that, you know, like you had alluded to, the potential of a professional women's league. I think that the youth academy and that
Hmm.
structure within USL, you know, it's a big pieces of our club that we want to nurture. You know what I mean?
Correct.
I got a chance to talk to Tyler McManus just today for the 451 pod interview's going to be coming up in a while. And he's the director for youth development for our club. And so we were talking about that, like how we were already building a pretty significant youth development component of our club. And then obviously it was beneficial to step into a system that had a good structure where that can flourish. And so that's legitimate. Now, with NISA, it's like, it reminds me of players who have an amazing amount of raw talent, bet you never see it because
they get in the way.
their highlight film sucks. They don't have good, you know what I mean? Like, you're watching their highlight films on YouTube and they look like a little ant, you know what I mean? And then they don't even circle who the person is. And it's like, how can you get noticed? How can you get noticed as a player when you have, that? But obviously there's a lot of complexity into that. These are young men and young women. And with NISA, it was a young league, you know what I mean? So I do think
that's
that at
the
times
issue. It's a young league.
And I think supporters, our supporters, as well as other supporters and obviously folks from outside of the league that were just waiting for the downfall of NISA, you know what I mean? Just want, in some ways, just think it's just another distraction. I think there was a lot of unfair criticism and that there is something legitimate to be said about clubs launching off in the professional level and a league that is launching off in the professional level in the middle of a global pandemic for 2 years.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it's like, you can't, and these are, for the most part, are small businesses. These clubs, now they might have a deep pocket that is a primary owner and all that, you know what I mean? But for all intents and purposes, these are small businesses that are launching to another level of risk in the middle of a pandemic. And I felt like, man, that was difficult to see so much focus just being like amplifying certain things with the league. Now, like I said, but then there's legitimate criticism. There's things that NISA did that teed that up for people too.
Here's my biggest issue with NISA is I love the idea of NISA overall, but it was NISA, then NISA Nation, which is, and I love the idea of NISA Nation. And I do. But the problem is you haven't got NISA down stable yet.
Right.
Also, on top of that, they were also trying to work with UWS originally for the women's game. Then they said, that
short-lived.
That I think it lasted 3 months, maybe.
Yeah, I don't believe that. Yeah.
And then they did what was it? WISL, I believe is what it is. They announced it, but yet you haven't heard anything since then. To me, and this is where I go back to the lack of the leadership at the top, is if they would have took the time and said, okay, hey, yes, we're starting out, in the pandemic, it's horrible time. Focus these 2-3 years on NISA, then work to kind of build back. And I know it's hard because, I follow Protagonist Soccer, and if you don't, you should. And if you can support, Dan and the gang, they do a great amount of work, not only for NISA, but all of lower league soccer for that here. Amen. But to me, they needed to get that foundation, and they didn't. And then, unfortunately, and this is where it's going to be a test for USL, NISA, and every other lower league here. MLS has decided, hey, I want to hop in, and they're going to do MLS Next Pro. But because NISA doesn't have that foundation, there's already whispers of, Chattanooga, if things don't get corrected in a proper way, just because they can't go to USL because of USL's dumb decision to put, the red team there. I don't even call them by the name, but the red team.
The Sad Wolves.
I just call them the red team. I don't even acknowledge the name. But to me, like I said here, because of that closed the door, on Chattanooga to, most likely come to USL, that it's going to most likely either drive them back down, which I don't foresee happening. I do think that they stay professional and unfortunately, at least short term, make the move to MLS Next Pro if things don't improve. And that's just my speculation, just, on reading some tea leaves and through here. But
if USL could somehow reconcile that situation, and I mean, I don't see it happening, don't get me wrong, but if there were some way to rectify that situation and reconcile what happened there, and you had
there is a way
Chattanooga
for them to do
FC.
it. Now, whether
Well, yeah.
they'll do it, well, to me, it would. To me, how they do it is they give the owner, give him the team in Boise, a USL championship team in Boise. Just go ahead. Hey, we're going to give you the rights to a championship team. You're not going to have to buy in anymore. Now, here's where the difficult part is. The Chattanooga FC would have to work with the red team to be able to negotiate. Because to give the credit to the red team, they have done a decent job of building a proper stadium there. I know the location isn't perfect if you talk to somebody, from Chattanooga, but from all things that I know, the stadium itself isn't bad. There's the whole academy structure, and there's drama behind that to where it could go back to CFC. So there is some work that could be done. I know the owner of Chattanooga is the mayor, so hopefully he can kind of put on his diplomatic hat, and each side's going to have to swallow a little bit of pride if they want to make it happen. But I think there is a way to do it. But we all know that egos is going to prevent it from happening. And I'm not saying egos on Chattanooga's side
CFC,
alone.
right.
I think there's a lot of egos going in on the red side, and a lot of egos at the league office that had hurt feelings because Chattanooga said no.
Yeah. And I think from the outside in, I think one thing that a lot of observers, particularly those observers who are dismissive of the pain that caused CFC supporters, I think one of the disconnects is, and I think most of us
we have a little bit different views on the situation. You and I have gone back with it.
Right.
Now, we all agree that what USL did was shitty, but to me, none of the parties are innocent. I'm talking about ownership groups, not talking about the fans or anything along those lines. Along those lines here, to where Chattanooga was open to the idea. It sounded like that there was a split in the board. Now you can kind of question the ethics of some of the board members, that ended up leaving and then going over. It's an ugly situation for soccer, and unfortunately, that's what U.S. soccer likes. Or that's how it's built. I guess it's how the mousetrap is designed, as the great Chris Kessel says.
Yeah. So, but like what I was getting ready to say was, like, I think one of the disconnects that people have is when you have a club like Chattanooga FC that organically emerged out of the community, like it was a community-led effort, that it wasn't like, some people enjoy their soccer teams because they just popped up out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Somebody bought franchise rights and then said, all right, I'm going to jump, like some guy from, let's say, Utah, you know what I mean, comes in and plops a bunch of money down and says, we're going to pop up a club, you know what I mean? And there may be limited, energy coming from the community, you know what I mean, to make that happen. Chattanooga FC, the soccer team is the community. You know what I mean? The community is the soccer club. You know what I mean? And they're so intertwined that when a situation happens that begins to divide that, it's not even just about, like dividing it in a sense of, okay, somebody's coming, they're going to split the team up. The women's team is going to go over here to this side, and they're going to take some of the youth structure and they're going to go over to this side. And it's just like this
Caused a
functional
mess.
business relationship. No, but we're talking about, this is a community. This isn't just a detached soccer team franchise or sports franchise or whatever, you know what I mean? And then somebody comes in and they're just going to restructure departments like they might do. I work in higher ed. So they restructure, like these are people's lives. These are people taking their children, you know what I mean, to, you know, an academy, building relationships with coaches that now all of a sudden have been plucked out of that system and put over here. So, you know, I think that there's that piece where, you know, the pain that comes with that situation is deeply embedded, because it wasn't just a division of a soccer team. It was a division of a community. And, I had a conversation a few episodes ago with Jim Hicks, who's the co-host of the 423 pod out of Chattanooga, and then an extended time with him where we talked in depth about this.
He loves USL.
Yeah, really, really. But with that being said, he still, he gets it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
He understands the complicated nature of us making that jump. You know what I mean? And actually that Chattanooga situation is an example of one of the areas that made it difficult for me when we were talking about going to USL, because it was like, this is my friend. You know what I mean? Whether you engaged it or you were a passive enabler of allowing it to happen, it was like, okay, now like the enemy of my friend is providing the house for my community to reside in, and to a certain extent, right? But obviously there's a lot of complexities to it.
So speaking of the transition to USL Championship, how was that received? Because I actually attended, the meeting virtually for that
Press
here,
conference
the press conference when they announced it. It's been 6 months probably since then.
December, right?
Yeah, 3 months. Yeah.
Wow, it seems like it's been longer. Yeah, it was December. I think beginning was December. It was.
So obviously there was the initial shock. Although I've talked with a couple of Detroit City supporters that they weren't as shocked, just because they could see the path starting to develop the last year, within NISA, where something had to change. We'll just leave it at that. But for the supporters, for the community, because to be fair, Detroit City caught some grief moving to USL Championship, because you guys were one of the faces of quote unquote the indie soccer scene for that here. So how is that adjustment now that we're less than 24 hours from kickoff? How has that adjustment been for the fan base and the community of Detroit City?
I think that the trust that has been built between supporters and our front office, particularly our founders, again, Sean, Alex, Dave, Todd, particularly, there's a lot of trust there that that they're going to make decisions that's not going to hinder what we're building here. So I think that there was a mixed bag reaction. It's hard to know that from the outside in, because when you look at our supporter base, a lot of attention is captivated from obviously the Northern Guard, right? Not the only, but certainly the largest and loudest supporter
the most
group,
known, yeah,
and definitely the most present in social media and other in other ways, right? Obviously, a majority of the supporters that are going to be coming down there tomorrow that are already there, a lot of them are going to be affiliated with the Northern Guard, not all of them, but so you have that sentiment, and even within that group, the people who affiliate themselves with the Northern Guard, there's a mixed bag. You know what I mean? So, but I think overwhelmingly, supporters trusted the move and thought there must be something pretty bad or something pretty appealing for us to make that jump. And I think that one thing that is clear, that for us to continue to garner the momentum that we need in terms of investment, we needed to move up into a higher tier. When you start talking about garnering sponsorship dollars and generating revenue that we need to serve our community the way that we would like to serve our community, the reality is that, look, we've experienced at the amateur level being really, I don't think it's an overstatement to say, internationally known for an amateur club, right?
Yeah, you guys
Um,
have hosted international
exactly.
friendlies that at the time everybody's like, "Why? What? How is
Yeah.
Detroit City doing this?"
And beat some of them too.
It's a friendly, yeah, but yes.
No, man, it's serious. No, they put their best up there. No, just, listen,
I
yeah,
heard
we
I
don't.
heard some of the teams did, they may not have started, but they did make some
Yeah, and we
adjustments.
don't. Yeah, we don't need to get into details of all that. Let's just look at the scoreboard. But certainly at the amateur level and at the Division III level, you know what I mean. Made a lot of noise, and not just noise in terms of popping smoke and singing and chatting, right, and getting wild on social media, but like on the pitch, the fellas were making noise.
Mhm.
Even in MPS, we didn't win a championship in the MPSL, but we made it to the semifinals. That would be worthy of a promotion playoff in another system. You know what I mean? In some ways, right? Um, and we would barely, at times, barely get coverage even from our local media. You know
That
what I
won't
mean?
change. I don't think
And
that's going to change with USL. I hate to tell you that. I
right.
don't.
Well, no, it is. I mean, we're already seeing it change. We definitely
Oh,
are
are
seeing it
you?
change. Yeah, we're seeing an uptick in that. At least from my perspective, we are. But so you figure stuff like that. You know what I mean? And like I said, getting investment. You know what I mean, for the club. I think that's just, USSF has enabled a crabs in a bucket mentality in U.S. soccer. You know what I mean? And we're just
Mhm.
sitting here pulling one another down from league to league and club to club in different ways. You know what I mean? So that is what it is. It complicates things. So I think that, to answer your question overall, I think that people trusted the decisions that were being made for the jump. Now, I do think that and I still feel like, in some ways there were some issues with NISA that were unnecessarily amplified, that
Mhm.
I still don't know the details to. I got a lot of information that was out there that was, trust me this, trust me that, wait until this comes out. No, I don't play that. I mean,
All
even
right.
with my own fellow supporters here, that's just not me. My criticisms, my concerns with going to USL Championship or within the USL system have to do with literally reading a franchise disclosure document and seeing where the starting point of negotiation was for a lot of things, and going, yeah, I don't like where that could potentially go, you know um and I've not seen it. So my criticism comes from what I've actually seen in a legal document that would be binding after negotiation. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So there were just a lot of things that I was hearing about NISA. Obviously, for example, like we would hear pay the refs. You know what I mean? The issue with
Yeah, there was
payments of
the issue
refs.
with the refs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's an issue. Everybody, you know what I mean? The refs should be paid, but to this day, what is the context to all of it? I don't know.
Nobody's been able to. Nobody is officially on record to say it. NISA. Yeah, I think that NISA said, "Hey, there was a payment issue, but it was quickly resolved."
Right.
Which
So
give them
yeah.
the benefit of the doubt that could happen. So.
Yeah, so I don't know, and I'm also thinking about payment issues again within the context of a global pen. It's no excuse. You pay your workers, right? I'm a union man myself. I'm in a union myself. I believe in, you know what I mean, the rights of workers and fair compensation. So that's not the thing, you know what I mean? But I just know that when chatter starts to emerge in social media, and otherwise, and I don't have details to what's happening, then it's difficult for me to jump on that boat. So I don't know, but clearly, I think that NISA had some serious operational issues. You know what I mean? Whether that can solely be credited to them being a new league trying to find their way within a landscape in American soccer that is going to be brutal for anything that is not MLS, and a global pandemic and everything. Who's to know? But if the owners of our club have sat in on meeting after meeting and said, yeah, this ain't going to work. And as much as we want to be um, a representation of independent soccer within the American landscape, what's most important is what we're doing right here at home in Detroit. And that's where Alex Wright, again, to mention him, when at the press conference, he was talking about the move, and he pointed right over his shoulder on the pitch at the field house. We were at the clubhouse for the announcement. He pointed at the pitch down at the field, and pointed at the youth and say, there's a generation there that can't sit here and wait to see whether or not this works out. And that's fair, because for me, in terms of my support and the foundations of 451 podcast, in terms of, goes back to 2010, the Detroit City Football League, a recreational soccer league that was brought together to connect residents and neighborhoods in the city of Detroit to uplift the city of Detroit. This club that came out of that league, right, when the owners met, was always intended to uplift our city. You know what I mean? And if I can respect that, the need for that is too dire for us to sit in an idealistic pocket and wait to see if folks are going to get their stuff together. And so that was a changing point for me, in terms of me trying to make sense of the jump. I was very reserved when I heard of it, but if I didn't have the respect, the admiration, and the trust of our ownership, that probably would have been quite different.
I can tell you, so I was with the club that started out in NASL.
Right.
That's where I fell in love with the game. And NASL, NISA is kind of an offshoot of that. USL was an adjustment for it here, because, and this is just how US soccer is built up, is we're a club first, but if my club is playing in NISA or NASL, hey, that's the league that I'm supporting. USL, hey, nice league, but you're through there. So coming over to USL, for me, it was, hey, this is kind of cool, because you're getting out of the drama of, I was coming from the drama of NASL and teams coming in and out, like crazy. NISA doesn't quite have that that team turnover like NASL did at that time. Now you're starting to see a little bit of it.
Or USL did in their early years. People forget about that.
Yes, but we may have to do another show, because to me, NASL could have killed USL or kept USL at D3 by making a couple of adjustments that they had the opportunity to do, but because of their lack of leadership, well, it was a change in commissioner that what took place. They didn't go that path. But to me, so you guys have made the move here over to USL. I think I saw what most games that you guys have played in a quote unquote season is what, 20 something. I think on average, last NISA was 18.
Somewhere on there.
One was 18. Now that's not counting the Legends Cup, which I think you guys played with 4 matches.
Well, 18 pretty much in a half season though.
Well, no, 2021 NISA was one. That's right. You had 8 in the first half. That's right. And then they changed their formation. So. Yeah, so in 2021 you played 8 and 18, so that's 26, and then you had the Legends Cup and the Independent Cup, along those lines here. But you're going to go from playing in and that to a set league where it's 34 matches that you're going to have. Obviously, we're the first match here. So expectations.
Well, match, right? Match.
I call them matches.
I don't know. I'm just joking. Friendly.
I call them matches or games, whatever you want. Whatever you want the proper.
No, I was saying, the idea of San Antonio being a match for us, but
we'll get to that here. I think we're going to differ on who the superior team is, and of course we'll find out 24 hours from now. But Kenny, your expectations on because I do think that it is a step up. I think we can both agree to go from NISA to USL Championship. Even the MLS 2 teams, and you're going to have 3 of them on your side here, are better than what was in NISA for the most part, and that's not to dog on NISA at all. It's just deep. It
should be.
It's a higher level along those lines here. But your kind of thoughts or expectations for Detroit City, just kind of overall on the season, for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think so the short answer is I expect us to be a solid mid-table team and make the playoffs. That's my
6 or 7
bar.
range.
Yeah, that's my bar for the club. I think we can do that. And a lot of that has to do with my trust in Trevor James and his ability and his connections and and seeing who else he can pull into the club. And I think that even so, I mean, obviously we still have some work to do on our roster, but even the roster that we do have is quality, you know what I mean, in a variety of ways. So I think that they can definitely, be a solid mid-table team in his first year. And then, if they exceed those expectations, great. I don't think that, obviously with the squad that we're bringing to the table, I think maybe about half of the squad right now are returners from our club last year, from the squad last year, roughly. And obviously brought in a few other of the NISA All-Stars with us and pulled from some talent from USL Championship. Some of the NISA talent that we pulled in, or USL League One talent that we pulled in, also had USL Championship experience at different times. You know what I mean, too. So, I think that. I think one thing we have to remember about when it comes to the talent that we have or any club has at the professional level in American soccer, that because of the way that our system is set up and that we we have a closed pyramid.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
it is. There is a lot of talent that is being passed up.
Exactly.
So if we have a player that's most of his talent is at the Division III level and he hasn't had the opportunity to play in USL Championship, to me that doesn't mean that player is lackluster in any way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? There's a finite amount of teams in the one league that's there, and if it would be different if we had a system where clubs could move up and down and on merit based, and you would have a different kind of a relatively more different distribution of that talent, because you might have Division III teams that were trying to beef up their clubs for the purpose of being promoted. You know what I mean? So I think that there's a lot of men in professional soccer that are being passed up, that need some tender loving care, that we see it all the time. Look at how many young men are being, going through that MLS draft and, you know what I mean, getting drafted and then end up, being spit out somewhere else. You know what I mean? All the time. We've had so many players that came through our system, you know what I mean, here in Detroit, or through our club, here in Detroit, that were that exact story. We have some that were signed this year and some who do not have USL Championship experience. You know what I mean? So, you know, I'm pretty confident, you know what I mean? And I also, there's a couple of players that are in the mix, you know, that for me, as somebody who might not have as much of a sophisticated eye for certain things as a Sean Spence or a Sean Grogan, you know what I mean? Some of these are
Mhm.
some of the supporters in our base, or even Jaime, you know what I mean, and Dennis and Alan, who are part of the 451 pod, and Kelly, you know, have more of a sophisticated eye, you know
More
what I
the
mean, for some of
technical
the stuff.
side, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? I was a highly competitive player back in the day, but we're talking like 20 years. I'm on my El Bundy, you know. So there are things that the gaffer sees in these guys that I'm like, I don't know if I see it, but there's a lot that I don't see.
Exactly.
I didn't see that in Connor Rutz. You know what I mean? And look at Connor. Connor has seized the opportunity. I didn't at one time. I wasn't sure if I saw that in Nate Steinwasser.
Mhm.
Man, I just interviewed him in the last episode that I had. I said, you know, not only did you solidify your spot as the number one keeper in this club, you solidified yourself at the Division 3 level and slapped the ever living out of Nisa. You know what I mean? Obviously, and they had a strong back line and whatnot, you know. But so there are these guys that it seems like Trevor is able to pull out the best. So anyway, long story short, you know, I think that we can definitely be a club that makes the playoffs. That's going to be my bar, and I'm just looking forward to seeing what Trevor James is going to be able to do. I know from having interviewed quite a few of the players already for the podcast that, which isn't surprising. What I'm saying isn't necessarily surprising when I had these interviews, but the type of person that Trevor is pulling into the club. Not only are these very technically skilled and gifted players, but they mesh well. We've got a
Mhm.
really humble bunch. You know what I mean? We're going to have a really cohesive unit, and that is something that is extremely undervalued. They're very athletically capable, but more than anything, and the guys will tell you themselves when they did what they did in Nisa last year. A lot of that was credited to the chemistry that they
The
had
bond
within
they
the
had.
squad.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And you could have a bunch of, you know, we see it. It's a tale as old as days, right? That, you know, star players that come in and just, you know, they mess up the entire funk of the team. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And they're great. They're very technically gifted, but you know, you never really have a squad. You know what I mean? And I think there's that. And I also think that one thing that is over or is undervalued and under misunderstood, or is easily bypassed from the outside in, is that Detroit as a city, along with our sports teams that have often done their best when they embrace this creed, is in a very natural position when we are underdogs.
Mhm.
And we feed on it. It feeds right into what we call the spirit of Detroit. You know what I mean? And so that's not a situation where, even though our club has been successful on the pitch at the Division 3 level, by no stretch of the imagination are these guys, you know what I mean, sitting on their laurels. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they're not going to buckle under pressure. You've got guys, for example, I just had an opportunity to interview Francis Atuene, right?
Mhm.
Who certainly is a guy that had not had, has a lot of potential, and then ran into some injuries, right? When I'm sitting down to talk to him, when he was telling me why he ended up going to University of Michigan for college instead of going and playing at like UNC or some of these other highly decorated men's programs at these other colleges, he went to U of M because they had never won the Big Ten.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? He comes from a background, you know, he's comes from Ghana, you know what I mean? And he comes from a community in Ghana, you know what I mean, where they had to make lemonade out of lemons. And he is the type of person that really wants to uplift the underdog. You know what I mean? That's why he went to U of M. What's kind of funny in some sense when you think of academically, U of M being an underdog because it's a very prestigious university, but
But
with the
for the
soccer
soccer, it's
problem,
different, right?
and
Mhm.
and 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 he said that had a lot to do, you know what I mean,
And
with
that's the
his.
men's side. The women's side, from my understanding, is very good.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you for making that distinction. The internalized patriarchy that is coming out of me. Yes, the men's side, that program specifically, you know what I mean, has struggled, and that's why he wanted to go there, because he wanted to be a part of that crew that would actually bless them with that first Big Ten title. And he did just that, you know what I mean? And he's come, and his story in terms of why he's coming here, not only because of that, as we make this jump and they know it's going to be a new challenge, you know what I mean? There's that kind of creed there. And that is very, that's very undervalued. You know what I mean? People don't, you know, I get it. It's a long and tedious season, and USL Championship is a different beast, as it should be. The budgets are bigger. Like we were chatting, you know, look, man, if your budget is that big compared to a NISA squad and you aren't better competitively, then you need to go sit in the corner and take a seat, because you don't belong here, right? You should be able to do more with more. You know what I mean? And
I will say this, and I've got it queued up. I just haven't put it out yet. I have Detroit, or actually, I think I did put it out here. I have Detroit City finishing 8th, just out of the playoffs.
yes,
And it's going to depend on how they start, because I'm not going to lie to you. I'm happy we're playing Detroit City. You know, part of me would have loved to gone up to Detroit City, because that is on the bucket list to be able to do is to go to Keyworth and experience it up there.
Yeah.
However, I do think, you know, just like with the Oakland Roots, now Oakland Roots, you know, not as successful in NISA as Detroit City, but I think they made the finals, right? If memory serves me correct.
Yeah, they lost to us
in the finals.
We chipped them.
And so, but they got off to a slow start, just because there is going to be an adjustment. The speed's different, the physicality is different. You know, and I know you guys got Billy Forbes, you know, Hopino, you know, Declan Lynn, you know, I know those are names that have played in USL Championship.
Yeah.
I also think that if Detroit City would have played in USL Championship, that you guys already have a USL Championship quality team. Like if you would have played last year, and I catch some grief on it, but I watched some of the games that you guys had. I didn't watch all of them, but you know, I did, you know, go on to 11 Sports and watch the Detroit Cities, and especially when it was on BN Extra for that here. The Detroit City is not a team to take light, you know, especially for San Antonio, and I don't believe that they are. Don't get me wrong. You know, I know Maxi Rodriguez, who is a San Antonio local kid, went, you know, for here, did the EDP program, you know, when San Antonio started, played a couple of years with us. I think went to Richmond, and then, you know, has found a home up in Detroit City. Pato never played with San Antonio FC, but you know, did go to school here.
Right.
Billy Forbes is 3 times, you know, has played in San Antonio. So you've got people, or you've got players on the team that, number one, is going to know what it's going to be like, you know, to play San Antonio, and it's different coaches. Don't get me wrong, than from what they're here, but Detroit City isn't going to be coming in going, oh my God, you know, this is Toyota Field, you know, this isn't Championship Park out, you know, playing, you know, Cal United, you know, in front of a couple of, you know, couple of thousand fans. You know, I would expect that there's going to be 5,000-6,000 fans at minimum. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, I hate to say this, but it's going to be cold in San Antonio. You know, I think it's supposed to be in the mid 40s, 50s.
Oh man, how you all survive down there?
I said cold for San Antonio.
I get it. I stayed in Durham for a good 4 years. I get it.
So that may, you know, like, I'll be interested to see what the crowd size is. Historically, they do very well. Historically, though, you know, it's not this type of weather. So I'm interested to kind of see how that does turn out. But to me, like I said here, I will be interested kind of turning, you know, to the match here, how Detroit City is going to handle the high press of SAFC, the speed of SAFC, you know, especially on the outside for that. And I know Billy Forbes got speed. I don't think Pato is the fastest. I could be wrong. You know, you might, you know, just on TV, it doesn't seem like, you know, he's the perfect, what I call a poacher striker, where he's always in that right spot where he's supposed to be able to put it in. So I'm kind of looking forward to see the chess match between the coaches Alan Marcina and
Trevor James. Yeah.
Trevor James. I know you guys are very high on Trevor James. It sounds like he has he's won everywhere he's been. But this will be a new challenge. Not only that San Antonio is going to have to face, but obviously he'll have some challenges coming through here. But from Detroit City side, what's kind of your expectations for this match? Coming in.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know. I don't know.
We haven't seen them.
They've obviously fared well against Indy and Phoenix, but as you've pointed out, at times, and I agree with you, these are friendlies, and and both clubs, in these competitions are both of these clubs in these competitions are trying out new formations, trialists, and figuring out a few things, tweaking things here and there. So, who knows, what's brought to the table after some of those tweaks from those. So I know that there's some folks out there that think that we're going to go in there and get waxed.
I don't
love
think
that. Yeah. And I think, probably a lot of that just has to do with, the vocality of our supporters that, people just want to shut us up. But here's the thing. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to for the fellas on the pitch when they go to these away matches, one of the things that we experience in every league, well, I say in every league, in the other two leagues that we played in, because we were the standard bearer when it came to bringing out the crowd for the matches, that obviously that's a boost of adrenaline for our fellas and for our women when they're on the pitch. But the other side of that people forget about, especially those who don't experience a full house that's rocking like Keyworth, is that boosts the other squad.
Mm-hmm.
That boosts, we pull out the best in our opponents at Keyworth, because for many of them, that's the first time that they've played in front of a crowd like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it lights a fire under their ass. You know what I mean? Now our boys get to go and experience that at other venues.
Correct.
They've had to go to places where they were literally playing at a field in the middle of a public park against a professional team that luckily the lights stayed on.
I won't lie, there are still some of those.
Oh, I know. I was watching a YouTube video of the stadiums last night in the Eastern Conference, and I didn't realize how many damn baseball stadiums there were in USL.
Well, last year, Oklahoma City Energy, and they're taking a hiatus this year. We'll see if they're back. They played at, and I've been to the stadium, historic Taft Stadium, but it's a high school stadium. Mm. And one of their games, the power went out and it never came back on.
Well, one of our old foes, AFC Ann Arbor, had a situation like that in the NPSL playoffs, and the match had to be forfeited, and they had to meet up halfway. I think they were playing Erie to finish
that was in the playoffs, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yes, I remember that.
They had to meet up halfway to play the last 20 minutes or something like that. But
that happened. I want to say last year or the last couple of years, but yeah. I remember that story. But
I'm looking forward for our guys to be able to have that beyond, you know what I mean, our traveling supporters being there to help them on, you know what I mean, just to have that extra boost to have a competitive crowd to face too in some of the places, obviously.
And I will say this here, because there has been some supporter group drama, which I inadvertently created here. How do I say this without pissing people off?
Blowing up your notifications on Twitter?
Blowing up things here. For Northern Guard, like I said here, they have, good or bad, they have a reputation. For that here. And I'm going to put this on my team. For San Antonio FC, you got to, and I hope every other team in USL Champion, give Northern Guard a chance. I wasn't around. I don't know all the stories. You hear stories about, Northern Guard getting involved and along those lines here. But there's one of the things that I found out through this here is between supporter groups, we've got to have better communication, because I think a lot of this could have been avoided if the two supporters groups could have got together ahead of time, kind of cleared things up along those lines here. And I do think from San Antonio FC and the San Antonio supporter groups, if things change, that needs to be communicated out to some of us long-term long-term members of the Crocketeers or Mission City or 210, because like I said here, I stepped into it by Northern Guard put out, hey, the do's and don'ts of coming to Toyota Field. It was perfect, through here, and I was like, hey, don't forget pregame, you can stop by the tailgate. Little did I know that there were issues with that here. Fair or unfair, that's not going to be for me to make that determination. I personally didn't like the decision. I expressed it to my frustrations here, but to me, I just hope going forward, both as a league, both for Northern Guard, both for the San Antonio supporter groups, communication not only between the supporters groups, but between internal and the supporters group of saying, hey, this tailgate may be a little bit different. Could have avoided all this drama that took place, and like I said here, but I think everybody's ready for the season to get started. For that here. But Red, like I said here, it's been a great conversation. We will have to have conversations in the future here. I don't know when we will play again, because we're typically in the West, you're typically in the East.
Right.
I am hoping and praying that we do get a chance, San Antonio FC, to go up to Detroit, unless we decide to take a family vacation to Detroit, which, no offense, but Detroit isn't typically a hot spot for vacation.
Not a tourist destination. Yeah, we're working on that.
So no, and it's not the city. It's just like I said here, it's I went to St. Louis. St. Louis is I went 2 summers ago we went St. Louis and Louisville. I made the trip over to Louisville before they opened up the new stadium for that here. So there is a chance that I may be able to take it up, because I do understand that Michigan does have some wonderful lakes.
Oh yeah,
up there, some fishing, along those lines here. So stopping in Detroit and catching a game would be through there here. Robert Rankin did say 3-1. We'll let Pato score, because he's cool, and we're like, I think Pato is going to get a great reception. Maxie's going to get a hell of a reception. I think Billy's going to get a hell of a reception here, which I think will be interesting on how Detroit City recognizes that, because Billy has been a fan favorite here. Maxie's local, and I will say this: one of the proudest moments that we've had as a club is Jose Gallegos came up through our academy, was sold to a team over in Danish, playing in the Danish Superliga for what, 500 and some thousand is the rumored thing here. I can tell you, and I know you've already emphasized, hey, that academy, that youth structure, and I know Detroit City's already got a solid pipeline on that here. There is nothing cooler than when your club can sign 5 academy kids that don't count against the cap, that late in the game that they get to come on and making their first professional appearance. There's nothing better than that,
that's
for a local community.
One of the fellas that's on our roster, Bosch Tanyi, he's a product of he played at Grosse Ile High School, and he won Mr. Michigan, best soccer player in Michigan, under the leadership of Jonathan Evans, who is a Detroit City FC legend.
Nice. So
that's cool to see him in the mix. You know what I mean?
And like I said, it's cool to see the move on. We have Leo Torres that got loaned to an MLS team for that here, and that's one of the things that I love about USL, especially compared to MLS, is number one, at an MLS level, you're not getting this player relationship, like you're able to have on your show, like we're able to have at the stadium here. But number two, to have that community base, and I know Detroit City is more community based than San Antonio FC. Just how San Antonio is it's a corporate owned team, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but it's not local owners like you have for that here. Even though they are locally, it's run a lot different. But to me, I'm excited for Detroit City, and I'll say this here, USL, go get the Cosmos. Let's get this Division II set up right. Cosmos are waiting. I know you got Queensboro coming in, bring in the two New York teams together. And I know Jake Edwards, once again, on Football Americas, said end of year, maybe pro rel. Let's get it done here. And I know it's still closed, but I want Detroit City. I want Miami FC, or the Miami FC. Let's get everybody together, because
it'd be. I mean, I think at the end of the day, when the Fed, takes the hands off, model for all this, then the best that we can hope for is that something's going to be built within this league structure that is going to be at least somewhat appealing. And I'd love to see the Cosmos pulled into USL, because we haven't had a good dinner in a while. So we're hungry.
The Cosmos are fun, dude. I know people love and hate them.
No, actually, I never have any problem with them, but I love poking at them.
We played them in NASL. Robert, you can go to hell, man. I'm sorry. We are not bringing, your pizza guy, your pizza buddy in Chicago to spice it up.
They could come to the annual meeting and bring the pizza.
I don't know if you know this, but Robert is the one of the people that got the New Amsterdam owner to give out pizzas. He never sent me my money. I was one of the first people to respond. And that fool didn't send me. He didn't cash at me nothing. From your Detroit, man. Come on.
I gave him my Venmo.
You guys have already won everything.
I gave him my Venmo. I'm not giving that fool my address. Here's my Venmo, though. That was something else. That was, at least that entertained us in the off season.
That was a couple of days where it was like, and the crazy part about this, in this is completely non-San Antonio Detroit City here, but
it's all good.
He went on Protagonist Soccer, with Dan, on their podcast. Sounded like a reasonable guy. Is like, hey, level-headed. Okay, yeah, makes sense. Brought, highlighted that, hey, there's some issues that he has, and it was okay. I can understand that as an owner. And then he just went off the rails, and like I said here, I'm not going to comment on why or what, what led to it, because that's not my position, and I have no knowledge of what the hell was going on. But there's
probably partial truths on both sides of it.
It was just like, and then the Chicago house. To me, they're the San Francisco Deltas of NISA, where they came in with all this buzz of, hey, we're going to be different, and they're taking a year off. So, but Red was definitely a pleasure.
Year off in American soccer.
It was definitely a pleasure talking to you.
I hate to say that.
So, like I said here, hopefully we can get together and just talk, lower league soccer again in the future. For that here, but like I said here, I know I think you're still up in Detroit, so you're not making it down. But for all the Detroit City fans, like I said here, I do hope you have a good time. Hopefully San Antonio treats you well outside of the 90 minutes. For the 90 minutes, like I said here, it'll be a fun stadium. RGV, you still suck, and I hope everybody has a great evening.
All right, brother. See you.
Thanks, appreciate it.